Hi, I'm Chef Justin Timonary, Florida's culinary ambassador. If you've enjoyed preparing fresh from Florida recipes, then you're going to love the Fresh from Florida Club. As a member, you'll be able to search and save delicious recipes, create custom menus, and ask me your cooking questions. Each month, you'll also get a list of what's in season, so you can make your family the freshest meals possible. It's free and easy to sign up. And best of all, you'll be supporting Florida's farmers, ranchers, and fishermen. Join the club at freshfromflorida.com today.
Had they continued to do Mad Max movies back in the 80s, would the next one have been Mad Max Private Dancer? And the one after that, then Mad Max What's Love Got to Do with It? I'm just wondering, or maybe they would have changed pop artists. It would have been Mad Max Girls Just Want to Have Fun. I'm just throwing ideas out there, Hollywood. You can have them all.
And I thought my mind went to scary places.
Quiet, you. Welcome, everyone, to The Long Road to Ruin. I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm not on drugs, Mr. Mark Radulich. And joining me from the Peanut Gallery is a man that makes sense of it all when I go off the rails. He is the wordsmith, Mr. Sean Comer, and you're not. How do you do, sir?
What kind of drugs do you take? I want them. I want recommendations.
I'm just thinking Mad Max Vacation, where they're all running around and instead of wearing, in post-apocalyptic armor and leather jackets, they're all wearing like board shorts, kind of like Batman and Cesar Romero in the 1960s.
Mark, I swear your imagination gives you all the makings of a great Fallout modder.
Like I said, Hollywood, these ideas are free. They're just spouting out like water from a fountain. Anyway, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I went to the factory. I did a business. my fellow fans of BoJack Horseman will get the reference.
Okay.
Right now, I'm kind of just rewatching my favorite moments from, and by favorite, I'm kind of just being very vague and of Mad Max 2. And for the first time ever, I just witnessed a snake used as aerial ordnance. And
well,
I'm kind of marvel at why this is a more frequently used tactic.
So if the song didn't give it away, and certainly this beginning conversation, this is Mad Max Week here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, and in coexistence, in synergy, in celebration of George Miller's return to the silver screen with Mad Max Fury Road. Tonight on the Long Road to Ruin, we're going to go back to the trio of pictures that started it all: Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, as it's called in some circles, and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, featuring Tina Turner and Master Blaster. He's Master, and the other guy is Blaster, and together they make Master Blaster. Spin the wheel, make a deal. We're not there yet. We'll get there.
Or if you were to, have them stand on the other side of each other and maybe possibly give one of them an awesome mutant pet frog, you would have Blaster Master.
There's all kinds of things you can do. You got to be creative, though. All right, so if you've heard Robert Winfrey and I on the Movie Review Club talk about Fury Road, which you can hear, and if you haven't heard it yet, when this podcast is over, go back into the archives and check out our review of Mad Max Fury Road from last night. I said at the time I actually hadn't seen The Road Warrior or Mad Max before deciding to go and deal with this movie and talk about it. So for the first time as a almost 40-year-old adult, about a week or two ago, I actually watched Mad Max. And then I watched The Road Warrior. Now as a kid, I had actually seen Beyond Thunderdome, but like I said, at the time, I think I only watched maybe half of it, and the half I watched I didn't get in the first place. Makes all kinds of sense to me now as an adult. But, yeah, I know that a lot of people love the Mad Max franchise. They were very excited when last year at Comic-Con, where I guess footage was shown and it was revealed that there would be a new Mad Max movie, which is now, as we know, Fury Road. People are talking about Fury Road very lovingly. I'm not going to get into what I think about that. That was our yesterday's podcast. But you can definitely hear in a lot of people's reviews that there's a nostalgia at play. People are very much in love with the Mad Max character and the world that he inhabits, the post-apocalyptic world. And
post-apocalyptic.
Yes, it's full of transgender people. Post-apocalyptic world. But I think one of the reasons why it gets such high praise and people love it so much is, and in many ways looked at it through rose-colored glasses, is that it sets the stage for a lot of sci-fi fantasy post-apocalyptic features that followed. It set the pattern. So, Sean, I think, what is your take on the franchise? Did you watch it as a kid? Did you watch it for the first time in preparation for the show? What's your deal here?
You said you wanted to talk about a new Mad Max movie, and so I had to sit down and watch Mad Max movies. That's about the size of it. I seriously didn't even really have all that much interest in seeing the new one until it started getting pretty much universally rave reviews, with the exception of you declaring you don't know how movies work anymore, and Stuart Lang deeming it Waterworld on wheels. Otherwise, I was like, new Mad Max movie? That's nice, dear. And then all of a sudden, it's got this 99% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm seeing all these articles talking about how it's a surprisingly feminist film, and whatever the hell that means. And now, all of a sudden, I'm actually trying to scrape together a little bit of money so that this weekend I can possibly go make a catch-up on the blockbusters double feature out of Age of Ultron and Fury Road. And that's about it. And thank God, because, fuck you very much. This first one was really a bad movie.
Oh, we're just gonna get right into it, huh?
This is not a good movie. Thank Christ it got at least kind of a polarizing responses where everybody kind of either loved or hated it, and someone managed to give Kennedy and George Miller and Mel Gibson a chance to make a sequel to it, which was absolute galaxies better than the first one was, because for starters, the first movie is great. In my opinion, it's a great riff movie, and not just because there's so much to make fun of. It's a great riff movie because there's no way, unless you are native-born Australian, you will have any fucking clue what anyone is talking about.
Okay.
No idea whatsoever. Go ahead with the plot summary, because I'm still trying to think of how I want to describe what was rolling through my head while watching this.
All right. So a couple of things I want to talk about. After having watched the entire trilogy, the first thing that jumped out at me here is, and let me get through all this, is I think it compares in a lot of ways to the Mariachi trilogy, in that you have the first movie, which looks like it's shot on a shoestring budget by it looks like a student film, but it's beloved, and it sets up this entire world that is then followed with a big budget Hollywood feature that is again universally loved. It's exponentially better than the first one, and it's the one everyone gravitates to. And then because it's so good, it has the big budget, crazy, 100% Hollywood third feature that falls short of the first two. And while Beyond Thunderdome doesn't quite have the CIA knew the FBI was setting them up with the DIA modality to it that Once Upon a Time in Mexico had, you can definitely see how Hollywood had its mitts in the third one, in a lot of ways, much like it did in Once Upon a Time in Mexico. So that's the first thing, is that when I think about the Mad Max trilogy, it reminds me a lot. It reminds me in a way of the Mariachi trilogy, which we talked about, I believe, last year. The other
that's a great comparison. I mean, also in the sense that you've got the story of Mel Gibson as a man who, by the end of the movie, whose life pretty much effectively sucks giant festering donkey balls, and he just kind of rolls off into the sunset, a jaded man, to go kind of figure out his great big, okay, well, now the fuck what?
Right. Yeah, so actually I think when you think about El Mariachi itself and Mad Max, there's a lot of similarities, oddly enough. But the other thing that I was thinking about with, I don't agree that the first Mad Max movie is a bad movie. I actually think, it's hard to understand. When we were talking about this earlier, I said I kind of related it to watching foreign movies with the subtitles off. I can't understand what anyone's saying, but I get enough of what's happening in the visuals to follow the plot. Wikipedia helps.
Mark, I would have understood a Lincoln Douglas debate between Mickey the Pikey and a Pikachu better than I understood the dialogue in this movie.
Like I said, there was enough visual stimuli that I more or less got what was happening. I mean, there were some slightly confusing things, and I had to go back to Wikipedia, like why is the one guy running away with his butt bleeding, and then the other one sitting there looking drunk? Who is he supposed to be? Yeah, that kind of thing.
Oh, good. Only one.
But as the movie rolled along, I got enough of it to be able to muddle through. It's kind of like watching Lucha Underground, which I don't have the El Rey network. I have Unimas, and Unimas doesn't have any kind of English translation, so you're stuck listening to Spanish commentary. But it's wrestling, and it's very visual, so you get enough of what's going on to appreciate how great Lucha Underground is. And if you don't know how good Lucha Underground is, just listen to Larry Zonka talk about it for what's seemingly an eternity on his podcast, which has returned to the airwaves.
Well,
but I digress.
But the other problem with it is, though, is aside from just the fact that you can't entirely hold it against them because obviously it's Australian English and it's its own dialect that none of us in the States here are exactly used to.
It's also just mixed poorly. Like I said it's just mixed poorly. Not only can you barely understand what they're saying, but it's also like recorded. It was like they didn't use boom mics at all. It was like, we're going to shoot these things on the mics that came with the camera.
Whoever mixed this goddamn movie shouldn't be in charge of a junior high dance. It's seriously, it's a movie that's made for bad lip reading. It would almost be more fun to just sit around with a bunch of pals and a six-pack and just turn the volume down and just kind of offer up your interpretations of what you think they're saying and just some rough guess what it sounds like. And like I said, in my head, after a while, it eventually just evolved into Pokemon noises. I just went into kind of like a little bit of a fugue watching it. But it's also, there's another element to it that frustrated me, and that's the fact that if I had not known what little I knew about the movie ahead, and gone and watched and just read and without going and reading the Wikipedia summary, I would have never guessed this was supposed to be a dystopian setting. I was going to guess it was supposed to be just some exceptionally shitty part of Australia. And please, if we have any Australian viewers, don't take that personally. Okay, I'm not going to say anything ill about your country. One of my favorite friends, Tosh Neem from the Irresponsibles, is from Adelaide. So, no offense meant there, but it just that's the thing though, is there's nothing, and it kind of almost halfway works towards something that would have been interesting. And that's the idea that when I'm watching a movie that's set amid a dystopian setting, that's against a post-apocalyptic, God, we are both going to butcher the ever-loving fuck out of that word so many times by the time the night's over. That's set against a poke-apocalyptic setting. I like the idea that whatever has happened has brought technological and cultural advancement to a standstill exactly where it was at the moment everything went to shit. I hate watching post-apocalyptic, I got it, movies where miraculously, supposedly, the world has nuked itself to glass, and yet there's all this spectacular, really impressive architecture just rising from the horizon. Like, really? Where did that come from? I mean, by contrast, and my fellow gamers out there will know what I'm talking about. And this is not an original observation. This is something I pulled from a gaming series on YouTube that I watched over the weekend. It's called Elements of Play, and it's by Will Strife from Yogscast. I strongly recommend you go watch it because it is superb. It points out that in a lot of wasteland-type games, like BioShock and like Fallout, you're not necessarily slapped in the face with a lot of anachronism. It feels very much like, okay, nuclear war hit at this point, and this is just kind of where everything was left. In BioShock's case, that would be okay. It was a city under the sea built in the 1950s. All hell broke loose, and pretty much you're amidst the ruins of late 1950s culture. Fallout 3 especially. Okay, nuclear war struck. World has been dealing with the fallout-ridden wasteland for hundreds of years. Humanity is just starting to emerge from the underground vaults, and everything is just, like I said, it's just stuck where it is. Nothing has really advanced. Everybody is just making do with the ruins of everything that was left over. And so I like that the setting of Mad Max was really grounded in that, but the problem was it just didn't look shitty enough. There was nothing throughout the movie that really explained to me, okay, all of this is what it is because the world has gone spectacularly to pot. This is why gangs are ruling the highways. This is why everything is a system of ramshackle, thrown together martial law. There was just nothing that really clarifies that. Like I said, it's just basically, okay, part of Australia that's not exactly looking nice this time of year.
Well, I want to debate you on that point, because I'll give you this much. It's not clear in the movie why or how far away we are from the collapse of society. I actually had to go back and do some reading. The world that they're in right now, they're in the dawn of the collapse. It's kind of like the day after the collapse kind of a thing, where a lot of society has sort of fallen to pieces, but and things have become very regional, but you can still live the quote I remember is, you can still live a relatively peaceful life if you kind of stay away from where the gangs tend to congregate. The maximum force police, which is what Mel Gibson starts out as, are doing their best to kind of sew together what's left of the social contract and keep as much law and order as they can. They sort of rose up against the gangs, which came out of the dawn of the collapse. It isn't until we get to the Road Warrior and Thunderdome and then Fury Road where we're so far now down the pike that all of civilization is lost. I mean, we're kind of jumping ahead here, but if you look at the end of Beyond Thunderdome, and really what kind of sets the whole second half in motion is I'm going to call them the Lost Boys. The Lost Boys believe there's still a part of Australia where things are green and civilization still exists. And at the end of the movie, they actually fly into Sydney, and half of it's buried in sand. They realize that all of Australia has been salted over, and without doing a spoiler, this comes up again in Fury Road, where there's a question of, well, is there a place that's still green for us to go and get away from, the tyrannical king? And Max points out, I've been there, I've been here, there, and everywhere across Australia, and there's no place left to go. Everything is salted.
Okay, all well and good, except when you're just starting out with your very first movie in the franchise. And don't get me wrong, folks, don't get me wrong. Reading is fun and mental. By all means, scamper to your local library. For for those who are not so inclined toward words of smart making, go to audible.com. If you go there, you get your first month and one audiobook free. It's really a pretty fantastic deal. Seriously, get over there, check it out. But
this podcast has been brought to you by audible.com.
All that being said,
it's not clear in the movie.
I shouldn't have prerequisite reading to understand your movie.
No, and I said that at the top. I said, I get what you're saying, and you're right. You are talking to the guy who often says, movies are a visual medium, show me, don't tell me. They not only do a bad job of telling you, they do almost no job of showing you. They just say the world has collapsed, but they don't make any of what I just said clear. And I kind of had the same thought as you when I initially was watching this. I'm like, this doesn't seem very dystopian to me. This just, this seems like modern Detroit, only with a lot more, outback.
Detroit, good comparison. That's a very good comparison. Or some of the shittier parts of Missouri that I both traveled through and lived in when I lived there. So. Right.
So that's a failure of the movie to not really set that up. And maybe if we had somebody who spoke, Pekingese Australian, they would be like, no, it was right there in the dialogue, fellas. Just, you and I with our tin Australian ears just couldn't hear it. So who knows? But so that's the setup of the movie, is that they're in the dawn of the apocalypse, and they're trying to stitch together some degree of law and order. And so to combat these roving gangs that are trying to capture the precious gasoline that is hard to find. Which, by the way, I have to say this. Patton Oswalt does a whole bit about how you need to get out of your hometown, and and he talks about a reviewer where he grew up who kept everything cool away from him and made him have to get off his ass and find it himself. And so he starts talking about the Road Warrior, and he was like, it's the future. There's no gasoline, but everyone's driving cars. I don't get it. No stars. And then proceeds to say how great Three Men and a Baby are. You remember that movie?
How great which movie was?
Three Men and a Baby.
Oh, God, that fucking movie.
Yeah. So anyway, but moving away from Patton Oswalt, which it's a funny line, but this is a world where, because of the fighting over gasoline, things have collapsed. Society is starting to crumble, and gasoline is now more precious than ever before. And so you have roving gangs of motorcycles and dragsters and cars roaming and taking what they can in terms of resources, sex, whatever.
Let's point out that where we entered the movie, I didn't even really understand until I actually went, again, to Wikipedia, what the hell exactly Max's character was. I seriously didn't get that he was an agent of law enforcement.
No, because if you haven't seen the movie, he's dressed in a sky blue T-shirt, a leather jacket, and black pants, and they're driving what appear to be yellow racing cabs.
I thought he was something like a bounty hunter.
That was a funny thing, because it opens up with these two goofy-looking fellas in the same outfits, in the same car, with guns, and they're shooting. And one guy shoots at the car, and I'm thinking these are the bad guys. So I think structurally the movie's got a lot going for it. That's kind of what I wanted to get to really quick, and we can come back and then revisit its flaws. But I think structurally what you have here is, here's your setting. It's the dawn of the apocalypse. Your bad guys are your roving gangs. Your good guys are the police. And it comes to a boil where your hero Max, who is a police officer, feels like he's losing his humanity as things are getting worse, and you have to become something of a monster in order to take these people down. So he says, that's it. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to lose my humanity. He has a wife and kid that he loves, and he says, okay, I want out. The boss says, why don't you take some time off, take a holiday, as they say, and go be with your family, and we'll talk about this when you come back. He's like, well, I'm not coming back because, again, and this is important for the whole franchise, I don't want to lose my sense of humanity. And then that same roving gang find his family and murder them in cold blood. So then it becomes a revenge story where he goes after them and takes them down and murders them. And at the end of the movie, he kind of screws around with the main boss's son. And, in his last gasp of air before he's blown to bits, he yells, "You're mad! You're mad!" And that's the end of the movie. So it's simply a revenge tale. But apparently watching, and so this is something I'm picking up having seen Fury Road, there's something about our culture that really enjoys fast cars and seemingly will vault fast cars on screen over everything else in a movie. Like, if you take anything else and just say, okay, here's a bunch of mindless action, people will poo-poo it and go, oh, it's just a bunch of mindless action, that sucks, that's not a real movie. What if it's a bunch of fast cars racing and smashing into each other? Brilliant. It's practically Citizen Kane. Okay? So I'm learning that about my culture. I'm learning to own that. And that's kind of, I think, what the attraction here was. It was a revenge tale, but it was also fast cars at Ridgemont High. It was just cars smashing into one another. It was Used Cars the movie, but only in Australia. Great. Wonderful. Things don't really get going, though, until you get to The Road Warrior. But I want to go back because you were really struggling with this movie because it doesn't do enough to really set the world up in a way that made any sense without having to go back and do any reading. What else didn't work for you?
That's the thing, is it's a fairly good idea that's just badly executed. Everything that I really disliked about it, unfortunately, comes back to not so much a premise that I couldn't get into. I could certainly get behind that once I understood it. But the problem is, number one, it's technically unpolished, and I really don't mean that in the charming, oh bless your little heart kind of way. I mean it as in it makes a 90-minute movie feel like the extended cut of Return of the King. Because
it's slow.
I lost interest so quickly, even as after a while, the banter between most of the characters started consisting of "Pika Pika, Bulbasaur, Pika Pika, Bulbasaur, Pika Bulbasaur." It just started kind of boring me after a bit, which was amazing because really when I looked down at how much of the movie I got through at one point, I realized it actually advances the plot along at a pretty brisk pace, but even then it doesn't feel like it because I'm just sitting here being constantly inundated with things happening and loud noises and crashes and Australians saying weird cryptic-y type things for no reason except to be weird and cryptic-y. And occasionally Mel Gibson will come along and say something in decipherable English, and except for that one time, I could have sworn that he said that Goose was full of liver. No, I'm not kidding. That was actually at one point what I could have sworn I heard him say. And it's just kind of all thrown right out there without any organization, without any really setting the world up. Just here's Australia, here's cars going boom, boom, kablam, and here people are shooting each other, boom, boom, boom. And, here's this guy running this other guy. It's like a movie that was concocted by a 7-year-old in the Outback who had nothing to play with except a couple shitty Hot Wheels and some firecrackers.
You really need to listen to the review of Fury Road, by the way. Just you'll know why when you hear it after saying that line.
that's about goddamn it. That's all there was. That's all there was to it.
So let me ask you a question.
What? What's up?
Let me ask you a question. There's talk about more Mad Max movies after Fury Road, and one of the things Robert and I said is they can't do another 2-hour car chase. That's too much. They can get away with this once, but they'd be pushing it if he tried it again. So we think Hollywood will make George Miller. like this keeps working. Just keep doing the same thing, because that always works out well. But being serious for a second, when I think about El Mariachi, right, Desperado was sort of an attempt to further the story along, but in a way also remake the first movie, but with a budget, and pay Hollywood actors. My thought here is I'm wondering if it wouldn't make sense to go back and not reboot the series as such, because really Fury Road is just a continuation of the same Mad Max story, just with Tom Hardy picking up the role. I'm wondering if it wouldn't make sense for George Miller to go back and just remake with a big budget.
You know what?
The original Mad Max.
Quite frankly, I'm picking up what you're laying down with that. I'm smelling what you're cooking. I think that's a terrific idea, because now he's older, he's a little bit wiser, he clearly has a little more sense of narrative structure. He has a chance to kind of go back and do everything with the first movie and kind of take that plot and meld it with the sensibilities and the polish and some of that went into the Road Warrior. And you're right, again, it's an astute comparison, because the Road Warrior is ostensibly the template for everything that Robert Rodriguez would use to frame Desperado. And what they both are great movies that you can watch as standalones, just watch by themselves, without necessarily having seen El Mariachi, without necessarily having wasted 90 minutes plus of your life on Mad Max. And they not only make absolute sense, but, a lot of people have this logic that sequels never top the original. And anymore, I think that's really been shot all to hell. Because, quite frankly, if you were to watch Mad Max 2, just because you happened to stumble across it and you told somebody else who was really in the know about movies, I just saw this great movie from the 1980s called The Road Warrior, early Mel Gibson movie. Absolutely outstanding. I really loved it. I had a bunch of fun. It was maybe a little bit thin on story, but it was really exciting and just an absolute blast to watch. And that friend were to say to you, "Oh, you watched The Road Warrior first? Oh, well, that's too bad. I mean, you should really go back and watch the first movie, Mad Max." And, once you were done fitting all the little pieces of your blown mind back into your head, you would go back and watch Mad Max, and by the end of it, you'd go, "How did that come before that? I thought sequels were all supposed to be inferior. This is like a Road Warrior fan film."
Right.
This is like somebody's shitty Road Warrior YouTube parody.
I tell you, it looked like a student film. It looked like if you, Robert, Gavin, all pooled our money and decided to, 1 weekend, shoot a movie with camcorders. That's how it comes. That's how it comes across. I can't believe this was in any way a big budget, even like an indie release. I've seen independent films. It still looks like they still look like movies.
But here's the thing: every so often, in almost any given medium, something comes along that imperfect. So imperfect, in fact, that it can be a little bit frustrating and, as I said, maybe even polarizing. But both audiences and the powers that be behind it are able to look past that and see, no. There's a good concept here. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of great ideas. Let's sit down and let's think about everything we wish we had done differently than this one and do it better and do practically the opposite in the next one. My favorite example of this is anybody out there who's ever played Assassin's Creed and then gone and played Assassin's Creed 2. It's a concerted effort to sit down and really fix everything that held the original back, and it absolutely shows. And that's what we got with The Road Warrior. Starting with the fact that in this movie, number one, we have a really simple but coherent plot. We have something that's set up early. It's understandable. We're given our backstory from the first movie in a really fairly brief opening flashback and voiceover, which was also extremely well done. And best of all, blessed gods of thunderfuck, you can understand what people are saying. It's like this time they actually said, okay, first thing we're going to add to the budget, actors. This time we are going to pay actors. We are going to pay people who know how to say the predetermined words and say them clearly. First thing we do. Second thing we do. We buy boom mics.
Yeah.
Seriously.
That's actually my biggest complaint about the first one. That's actually my biggest complaint about the first one is just how bad the sound is. Wrap up, and then let's transition into the Road Warrior.
That's what I was trying to do. Okay, I'll play your role here. I'll be your Huckleberry. Your thoughts in 140 characters or less.
I like the movie. I mean, I like you. It's a little hard to stay invested when you don't understand what they're saying, but I like the plot. I actually do like some of the quieter moments of the movie. I think there's potential to read. That was the other thing I wanted to mention. I mentioned the whole thing about the mariachi. The other thing that it reminded me of was a line by Eddie Izzard, where he said that and I won't do the whole bit because we don't have time, but he was talking about British movies are in his way, very thoughtful pieces, but they're not tremendously entertaining. They're deep, but they're not the kind of movies you can sit and eat popcorn to. But if a movie in Britain does any kind of business, it'll get remade in America, and instead of a room with a view, it'll be a room with a view of hell. Something of Satan, and he's just like in the British example, the guy walks into a room and he can't quite say what he wants to say, and he's like, I think I better go. I think you better, Sebastian. And then there's like the American version. Did you fuck my wife? Did you fuck my wife? Did you fuck my wife? What? And he shows like the typical American audience, and they're eating popcorn, they're eating their shoe, and he's right, and so I think what George Miller should do is take his template that he started with Mad Max and remake a prequel to Fury Road. Stay in that world, but go back and show us the beginning. Show us society collapsing. Show us the Maximum Force Police. Show us Tom Hardy losing his family all over again, and turning him into what he was in Fury Road. But here's the thing, and I think this transitions nicely into The Road Warrior. Every movie since Mad Max has started with narration telling us that the world has collapsed. And I'd like to actually see it. I'd like to see the precipitating events that brought about the oil wars and then gave us the world that Mad Max inhabits, where pockets of society still existed. So take that major complaint that we have about how they don't really explain why pockets of society still exist. You're forced to sort of figure that out on your own and show it to us proper. So with that being said, I think there was a movie there with a lot of potential, and I can certainly see why people adore it, but it's flawed to say the least. So moving into the Road Warrior. The Road Warrior, the desperado of the thing, is the big U.S. major motion picture release. We're further down the line. Mad Max, after having murdered everybody that took out his family, has been roaming the outback, the salted earth, just surviving. And he meets the pilot of a gyrocopter, and they, as you said earlier, they throw the snake at him. But basically, you have Mad Max out there, and he's scavenging, and he's fighting for resources just like everybody else. He's not a hero. He's just out there surviving, taking what he can when he can. And he's living in a world where the gangs have only gotten worse. And the biggest one right now, the head honcho, the big cheese, is Lord Humongous, who is the Gimp, if you'll recall, from Pulp Fiction.
I want to note something for our wrestling fans out there. In this one scene, you have the genesis of both Sid Vicious and Chris Jericho gimmicks. Because you have one of Sid's original, very early aliases when he was working under a mask, Lord Humongous, and what is his one of titles? He is the Ayatollah of Rock and Roll.
I was with you. So anyway, so Mad Max is out there trying to take what he can when he can. He's not a hero. He's just a guy surviving. And around him are still roving gangs. They're bigger, they're nastier, they're more violent. But everything changes, as I say, when Mad Max finds out about an oil refinery where people have built a small town around it. And he goes there. He gets captured by them. This, of course, attracts the attention of Lord Humongous, who basically says, "Give us the oil that you're sitting on, or we'll destroy your city and kill all of you." This leads to them freeing Mad Max and basically making a deal with him that says, you can have all the oil that you can carry if you help us get it out of here along with the rest of us, so that we can escape and being killed by Lord Humongous, which he agrees to do, which then leads to the third act, which is just about the entire thing is just about this one long car chase where Mad Max takes an oil tanker and tries to drive it to freedom. As it turns out, he's the decoy. There's no oil in the oil tanker. They put that on buses and small cargo boxes, and they carried it to freedom. This is important to know because apparently George Miller took the third act of The Road Warrior and said, I'm just going to make a movie about that and call it Fury Road, but listen to my review from yesterday to hear more thoughts on that. And so that's The Road Warrior. Again, it's a good plot. It's a good, it's a hero's arc. Here's a guy who's not heroic, who's lost his family, lost his way, and he's just basically a few shades short of an animal, and he finds his humanity and the hero within in helping these people. But at the end, the irony is that at the end, he doesn't even get to be with them. He's less a hero and more decoy, and he goes right back to where he was at the beginning of the film, where he's just existing. He's surviving. So it's an interesting tale. It was fun to watch. Again, a little hard to understand at times in terms of the way dialogue was delivered, but it wasn't nearly as bad as Mad Max. Lord Humongous is essentially a video game boss. There's nothing more to him than that. It's he's Darth Vader in bondage gear, and that's kind of it. Again, I understand why people like The Road Warrior. The cars went fast and blew up. Got it. People wore cool leather outfits and looked awesome. I get how The Road Warrior became popular in the 80s, where punk was sort of coming into its own, and there was excess and people looked weird. See Michael Jackson circa 1985. I get all that. But that's all there is to it, folks. I think when you look at it critically, it's a fine enough movie, but it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's not this big, it's not this deep emotional, profound picture. It's just kind of there.
It's a cross up of Joseph Campbell's monomyth, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, with the palette of an Akira Kurosawa movie. In fact, it's basically, oh God, and I'm unfortunately drawing a blank due to inadequate caffeination right now. Help me out here, Mark. The Kurosawa movie that Sergio Leone pretty much, well, I don't want to say outright stole, but outright stole to make for a fistful of dollars. Well, what's the one I'm thinking of here?
I know, I'm looking at a fistful of dollars now.
Yeah, because it's the whole idea
Yojimbo.
Yojimbo. Thank you. Because it's the whole idea of loner gunslinger comes to save the town and discovers some good in himself along the way. It's to put it one way that I've heard it said before in comparing Willow to Star Wars. It's not that it's a bad movie, it's just that it's a movie you've seen before. I mean, and I could rattle off probably several dozen or so more movies that I've seen then that are more or less the same thing. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Okay, along comes this roguish guy, not exactly with a heart of gold. He's just seeking fortune and glory, or in Mad Max's case, tank or two of gas. And along the way, he ends up becoming a player in a people's salvation. Well, kind of so it is here. It's predictable, but it's skinned attractively enough that it's still fun to watch. It's still certainly engaging because, unlike in the first movie, you know this story. You know where it's going. It doesn't need much setup, but you still appreciate this time they at least made an effort to set something up.
What do you think about it in terms of rewatchability? I mean, because I felt like I got through it once, and I'm like, okay, I get it. I get why people like this. I get how this informed movies of its kind for decades on after. But I have no desire to rewatch the thing. It's not even one of those where, like, oh, when my kids are older, they got to see this. Like, nope. Pretty sure Jonas and Lily can find this one on their own if they really want to.
You know what? As I said before, as I said last year when we talked about this movie, Desperado, one of my favorite movies of all time. I could probably watch this movie every evening with a cold beer, every night for the rest of my life, and die a perfectly happy, content man. And part of that is because there are so many parts where when it comes up, and I know it's coming up, yeah, you're damn right, I lean forward and I'm beaming like a kid at Christmas because I know what's coming. The moment when Salma Hayek is walking across the crosswalk and the cars slam into each other and she just can't resist that adorable little giggle, that entire fantastic opening credit sequence. Steve Buscemi telling the story in the bar. Even Quentin Tarantino, from the moment he says the words, "This reminds me of a joke." It's cool, and there's memorable stuff that I can just watch again and again and again and again. And yes, I include that in that Naked Salma Hayek. Anyway,
This movie, there's nothing I can really point to. I can't point to anything that's really eminently quotable, where from the moment I start to quote, anybody I'm talking to is going to recognize it. There's no exact one action sequence that's always going to stand out to me. I'm glad I watched it. It was a fun time, and if I happen to be, flipping through channels or flipping through Netflix or something late at one night, and I happen to spot it, and there was something else I wanted to watch, yeah, sure, I'd watch it and probably have a good time. But is it something where that's an easy first choice to rewatch? No. God, no. No. It's a good, interesting look at what a talented actor Mel Gibson really was from the beginning. Your opinion on his thoughts on the Jewish community notwithstanding. But otherwise, you could see it once and then probably just skip it.
Let me ask you your opinion on something. Much has been written about America's love affair with the car and the road. It's something I think that's distinctively American, uniquely American. Do you think that's what informs people's opinions of these first two movies, is because they're so closely tied to cars and racing and then explosions and smashing together and all that? That again, if you remove those elements from it and replace it with different kind of action, maybe these movies aren't so universally praised. Just kind of thinking out loud here.
The thing about it is when it comes to America's love affair with cars, it's a love affair that comes in many different shades for many different generations and many different American backgrounds. But what I believe it always comes back to is the idea is that the car is a catalyst for the power of independence, the possibilities of that kind of freedom. And I think that if you look at the way any generation views it, it's always going to come back to that. Even if you can go clear back to the halcyon days of the great American muscle car and look at the fact that a lot of it was about this proud symbol of emphatic masculinity and power and independence and strength that just radiates everything from the lines and the body of the car to the awakening rumble of the engine under the hood to the sheer horsepower that you feel as you're shifting, and it's just increasingly roaring louder and more insistent. And you can even kind of contrast that against the younger generation, the one I kind of grew up in with the original Fast and the Furious movies, where it was all about the really garish, tricked out Japanese cars, and where it's an expression of personality. It's an ugly, gaudy expression of personality, and often an expression of having more money than sense. But still, that is what it is. It's the idea of independence, the idea of having that kind of power over a phenomenally, exceptionally powerful machine. So when you're talking about that, it's the kind of thing you can watch, and as it kind of washes over you, it really does make you forget the fact that in this world where fossil fuels have become a precious scarcity that people are willing to go to war over because of how much authority they symbolize, God damn, you people are wasting an awful lot turning donuts in the fucking Australian outback. I think you're all missing the point of how you got here. Just missing it entirely. Because while people, and in fact the bandits themselves, they're killing people they're killing people for their gas. They're willing to go to ridiculous lengths to get it. And why? So they can basically stage the proto X Games on the first sand dune they find. It's not like they're hoarding it or anything. No, they get some gas. They bust out the dirt bike. It's basically fucking Mario Kart. Which by the way, anybody out there, anybody with more coding experience than I have, I will cede every internet to which I will ever have a claim if somebody will make a Mario Kart reskin dedicated to Mad Max.
That would be fantastic. All right. Anything else left to say about the Road Warrior? Honestly, I've got nothing.
I would swallow my dignity and buy a Nintendo Wii. But you know, it's funny you mention that. Because, to be honest, I mean, as this got bigger, you compared this to the Mariachi trilogy. And it's no more perfectly compared there in that when it came to the third movie, when it came to Beyond Thunderdome, really, this was where the Hollywood bombast seriously hit critical mass.
Well, I wouldn't go too far with that because I actually liked Beyond Thunderdome. I think it gets an unfair rap, all things considered. And I told Robert Winfrey last night I would go as far as to say that I preferred Beyond Thunderdome to Fury Road, which I'm sure people hear that and go, well, that's the end of me listening to this podcast. This guy's crazy. But, you know, let's get into it and hear me out on this. As I said, Fury Road, the 2-hour car chase. That's it. That's the movie. At least, like, Beyond Thunderdome tells a story, and it's more than just drive cars, save the women. You know, unfortunately, and this was my one complaint about it, is that a lot of the stuff that goes on in Beyond Thunderdome is a rehash of what already went on in The Road Warrior, which happens sometimes when Hollywood gets their mix into things. There's a tendency to hit the repeat button and go, let's not do anything too crazy here. Like, be creative and do new things. We know what works. So, but on the other hand, you get a little bit more of the world, because in The Road Warrior, he's out there in the wild, and then he finds the town, and then really the whole movie centers on this town and then the car chase. With Beyond Thunderdome, he gets robbed right at the beginning of the movie. He finds his way to Bartertown, and he offers to make a deal with Tina Turner where he'll kill Blaster, in a cage fight, Thunderdome, and in return, he'll get his stuff back. And it goes south, and he has to make a run for it. In which case, he gets out there in the wild again. He's saved by the Lost Boys. The Lost Boys say to him, "You're the one we've been looking for. You're the savior. You're the one that's going to bring us to Tomorrowland," which comes out this Friday, and I'll be doing a review on it next Wednesday. And he says, "No, you don't understand. There's nothing left. There's no Tomorrowland. It's gone. Everything's salted over. We're all going to stay right here, and we're going to be safe." And kids being kids, and being impulsive, a few of them escape, and they go looking for Tomorrowland, and they end up being caught, which he warned them was going to happen, and they end up in Bartertown. So he's begged by the rest of the children, the rest of the Lost Boys, go get him, to bring him back, which he does, and just like in The Road Warrior, he ends up sacrificing himself, whether this time knowingly. In The Road Warrior it was unknowingly. This time he knowingly sacrifices himself so that they can get away, and he ends up being caught by Tina Turner, who basically just says, "Aren't we a pair?" And seeing as he cost her everything, she goes, "Well, your punishment for costing me everything is you can walk home." That's it. That's how that movie ends. Little odd, little weak, but ultimately, it's a lot of the same stuff that happened in the Road Warrior, but for what it was, I thought it told a fun story. At least there was some characterization there. There was some semblance of more than just a paper-thin plot, and just to set up a long car chase. I thought in a lot of ways it was superior to Fury Road. And that was my impression of Thunderdome. My biggest gripes with it were, obviously, while I enjoyed seeing a more realized post-apocalyptic world, it still also felt like big Hollywood movie. And I don't know. And here I feel like there's no making me happy. Again, I don't want to spoil too much of Fury Road, but there's another situation where you have some time spent in Imperator Joe's kingdom, and my complaint there was you don't spend enough time in his kingdom. And I feel like the kind of place I would have liked to have spent more time was Imperator Joe's kingdom, not Bartertown. Bartertown just kind of felt like, oh, look, Mos Eisley's Cantina in Star Wars was fun. People seem to like that. Do more of that. And then Tina Turner doing a lot of rhyming. Spin the wheel. No, break the deal. Spin the wheel. 2 men enter, 1 man leave. All right. So that's it. Those are my thoughts on Beyond Thunderdome.
I think they really missed the boat by not. I mean, despite the fact that it's definitely one of the more creative and original fight scenes you'll ever see in almost any movie, especially for that period. I really think they missed the boat by not making the Max versus Blaster fight a coal miner's glove fight. I think you know what? As long as you're spinning the wheel and making the deal, I think that would have put it over the top. I really think it would have.
I think if they had hung it from the top of the Thunderdome, I would have thought you were right.
Really what I kind of compare this to in relation to Mad Max 2, and you hear me out if this at first sounds a little bit wonky, because I swear this might really bake your ziti. I compare it to Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, at least in terms of my preferences. Because of those 2 movies, I really prefer Evil Dead 2. I really do. I think it's the scarier movie. I think it's the better built movie. I think that all around I can just find very few flaws with it. And I like the dark, bare tone and how the scale and the ante is up just enough from the first one without it really feeling bloated by having access to more resources after the first entry in the series' success. That's kind of how, however, Army of Darkness, that's the one that everybody really likes. That's the quotable one. That's the this is my boomstick. Good, bad, I'm the guy with the gun. Give me some sugar, baby. Blah, 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 so on and so forth. And, of course, Hail to the King. That's kind of the way I feel like it is with these 2 movies. Mad Max 2, in my opinion, is the better of them because I admire how they had a little bit more, but they still showed some restraint in terms of what they did with it. And they still kept it to being a really limited movie, which despite having a lot of really intense scenes and lots of crashes and lots of violence, it still felt like it was really toned down. In this one, this was the one where it felt like it got really bloated. And like you rattled off kind of for a little bit there, everybody remembers stuff like 2 men enter, 1 man leaves, welcome to Thunderdome, blah, 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 blah. And everybody remembers the Tina Turner song and video. So this is kind of the more famous one, but unfortunately
I feel like, sadly, that overshadows The Road Warrior really being the better of the two movies.
I don't debate that. But I'll go to my grave saying that I think Thunderdome is still better than Fury Road. Sorry,
and you know,
Circus Du Soleil with cars, not a movie.
And you know, and again, and I will hand it to Thunderdome in one sense, in that it is some of the better fight choreography you will see in a lot of movies up to that point. Obviously, there are movies since then that have eclipsed it. But for being made when it was, and also it should be noted that this was a movie that went forward without some people who were heavily involved in the first two movies. Because, for one thing, it's scored by Maurice Jarre, who replaced Queen guitarist Brian May after scoring the first two movies. And I got to think that's probably one of the reasons we got the Tina Turner songs, was because I had this feeling that Brian May might have approached it a little bit differently. But also, sadly, this movie was also the swan song for producer Byron Kennedy, who was instrumental in making the first two movies. Byron was killed in a 1983 helicopter crash during Beyond Thunderdome's location scouting. And really, George Miller didn't want to go forward with it. And he wanted that to just be it. He didn't see any sense. But he was quoted later as saying, "I was reluctant to go ahead, and there was sort of a need to, let's do something just to get over the shock and grief of all of that," end quote. And in fact, the title card at the end of the movie is dedicated to Ogilvy. Or not to Ogilvy, different page of my notes, to Byron. So, I mean, you know, 100 words or less. Do you have anything more to really add about Beyond Thunderdome, or is there really anything left to say about it?
No, I mean, honestly, I'm ready to sum up the entire trilogy.
You know, you got to admit it was really pretty influential for being basically a really rough beginning that a lot of people probably find kind of charming just for everything they knew came after it, and for having a really fan-loved second movie and kind of bring it full circle back to being kind of polarizing with the third movie. The thing is, and this was the jumping-off point for Mel Gibson. Mel doesn't make this movie alongside George Miller and Byron Kennedy. We never get Lethal Weapon. We never get Braveheart. We never get The Patriot. We damn sure never get The Passion of the Christ. Okay, that one's going to polarize people, and whether that's for better or for worse. But hey, you know, it was the most successful snuff film in history. What can you say? But also, if you kind of look at a lot of the poop-apocalyptic movies that came after this, you can just see the influence everywhere. I mean, again, I'm a gamer, and I'm a gamer who loves the Fallout series. And anybody who has played that just sees this movie's fingerprints just absolutely everywhere. I mean, it was, for everything that's been improved upon, this was really the most iconic movie that really captured that sense of this is what animals we would really become if the world just entirely hit the bottom of the septic tank tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately what my biggest problem is that I can appreciate something that gave us the model for which when people were doing post-apocalyptic movies would go back to. And that's all fine and good, but I don't think you should then look at those and say, oh, and that's what makes them, just because it's first doesn't mean it's the best. I actually heard a guy argue this on Movie Fights recently. They're talking about what's the best car chase, and he's like, well, the French Connection, because it was the first. And I said, that's a cop-out.
No.
Just because something's the first doesn't mean it's the best.
When I'm having conversations with anybody, I try to never go to that horrible, horrible Jack Black and High Fidelity place of your opinion is objectively wrong. That would be one where I would look at that and go, okay, I can see where you're coming from, but I would also throw out there Vanishing Point, Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, the original Gone in 60 Seconds, and the Blues Brothers. All of them ahead in quality of the French Connection.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think about, the very first cell phones, right, where the size of bricks, it was the kind of thing Paul Heyman used to hit people over the head with.
Exactly.
Would anyone say they're superior to any cell phone you're currently holding? What, because it was first?
No.
I mean, that's how silly that argument is to me. So when I go back and I look at, the Mad Max trilogy, I thought it spoke very well to the psyche of man. I thought it had a lot to say about the kinds of people that we are. It's sort of the one bad day kind of a thing. It's like, it's the story of Job. When you think about it, it's look how great humanity is. Well, start taking things away from humanity and let's see how great it is, and then you see it collapsing into insanity. What does it take to drive a good man into a stark raving lunatic, who blows people up? Well, take away his family, and he descends into madness. So I liked all those things. I like the idea of somebody reaching up to be a hero only to find that he's the decoy, and that he isn't as loved as he thought he was. I liked all those things, but I've also seen better versions of it. And just because it was first doesn't make it better. And that's pretty much my summation of the Mad Max trilogy. It was a good start.
So I'm gathering that you're really not exactly popping even half wood right now with the prospect of having 2 more Mad Max movies come after Fury Road.
I was talking to Robert about this last night, and we both said, we're going to watch them because they'll be blockbusters. They'll be part of the blockbuster season. And as long as we're still doing movie reviews on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, I will still continue to spend my summers seeing blockbusters. And I have a son who will inevitably grow up to enjoy watching cars blow up. So I can't imagine me not seeing these movies. But I don't quite have that Avengers/Star Wars impatience I'm currently going through. I don't even have that Batman v Superman sort of, fret, that paranoid, anxious concern that I have about that movie. I'm just like, okay, they're part of our culture, and I'll see them when they come out, and I will continue to tell people you're getting excited over nothing.
I'm just going to go ahead and volunteer right now because I know how much fun you guys sometimes have when I get really pissed at a movie and really go off on a rant. I am pretty much here now volunteering to swallow a lot of fear and a lot of pride and see both Suicide Squad and Batman versus Superman so I can join you guys for a review of it.
I'm excited for that because first of all, I don't agree with a lot of your opinions regarding Suicide Squad. I mean, you're almost writing suicide letters at this point, and I'm like, all right, they're not that bad. I actually
no, I wouldn't go that far. It's just that I try so hard to be optimistic for this, and to be honest, Will Smith aside, when I first heard the cast, I was really enthused about it. But now just every detail that comes out, I just go,
this isn't remotely the movie I was hoping for. Not even close.
I have not low expectations, but Man of Steel and to a large degree the Dark Knight trilogy really set the tone for what Warner Brothers and DC are doing with their motion picture universe, the cinematic universe. And I think what they've shown us so far of Suicide Squad fits into that. But let's not go crazy and have this debate now. If you want to spend an hour lambasting what's come out about Suicide Squad and Batman v Superman, we can do a whole separate show for that. For the time being, let us give Mad Max its due by not talking about Suicide Squad.
You know what? As torturous as I found the first movie, the degree to which I enjoyed seeing the second one for the first time really seriously made up for that. It really did. I'm not going to say it's a new favorite franchise of mine or anything, and I might even disagree with you if I get a chance to double feature Fury Road this weekend with Age of Ultron. But it's fascinating to go back and watch for what it is. It's a lot like watching the early WrestleManias. They're kind of rough. In fact, they're really rough. But you can also see the framework for greater stuff that kind of lay ahead.
Sure.
So
when you look at WrestleMania 2, when they were showing it in 3 separate states and 3 separate cities, and the thinking that had to take place and the timing and everything else, and your main event of a taped up Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy, who knew that 30 years later Triple H would dress like a robot and walk to the ring followed by Terminators?
Mark, I swear, one of these days, maybe I'll decide to take a vacation down to Florida. Maybe you will, for one reason or another, manage to make your way westward to Phoenix. We need to, sit down over a couple beers and a couple lion tacos and watch certain WWE pay-per-views, because that one in particular, I kid you not, this is the first time in 2 or 3 years I have actually watched WrestleMania beginning to end as it happened. And I swear, from the moment his entrance began, I did not stop uproariously laughing until a good 3 minutes into that match.
The very first time he did it, I think it was him versus John Cena in Chicago. It had to be, because that's when they had CM Punk come out as one of the gangsters. And I remember, this is when they first started doing it, so it came as a complete surprise to everybody. And my friend looks at me and goes, "Are they having a best costume match?"
The thing was, and it's funny you mention that, because, and again, things coming kind of full circle. I watched that with my best friend, Jeremy Holtzoff, and God rest his soul, his best friend, Steve Black, at Jeremy's place in Missouri. And Steve was actually downstairs going to the bathroom. And, I hadn't really thought anything of Triple H started calling himself the King of Kings and everything. I remember at the time, the wrestling fan, Sean Carlos, made a hilarious poster of Triple H and Jesus. And it's just at the bottom, "This time there is no good news." But again, I didn't really think anything of it. I damn Skippy sure didn't think he was going to go there with it. From the moment he rose up from the stage, that goofy fucking throne, the giant sledgehammer, and the pipe next to it that I couldn't believe didn't have facsimiles of Goldberg and Scott Steiner's heads on it. Just like I just described, Jeremy and I, we laughed so hard that when Steve came back up, he missed, unfortunately, the entire thing. He comes back up and says, "What the hell happened? I could hear you two laughing at something downstairs." We just said, "We'll rewind it and show you afterwards. You have to see it." And as we rewound it, as we looked for it, Jerry muttered to me, "Sean, do you think it'll still be funny?" I said, "There's no way it can be as funny as it was the first time." And as we anticipated it, and then it happened, I realized, God damn it, it is every inch as funny as it was the first time. I remember thinking, Hunter, I don't want to think this was your idea. I don't want to believe that. Because this was the same guy that bludgeoned Mick Foley over the head with a gimmicky crown until he didn't know math, until poor Mickles didn't know math anymore. Because, as he later said in the candid interview, he said, "I thought the whole thing was stupid and I didn't want to wear the stupid crown." And the next night on Raw, they wanted me to go out there with the crown again, and I just beat him with the crown again, and I came back and they said, "You really don't want to wear the crown, did you?" I said, "No, I don't." And goddamn, almost a decade later, there he is. Terminator. And now I want to put aside catching up on the Daily Bite on Polaris, because now I want to go watch WrestleMania Play Button again.
All right.
I've had a bad week, and this is the most fun I have had the entire 7 days.
So that, folks, is our review of the Mad Max trilogy.
And WrestleMania iPod.
Yeah. All right, so some housekeeping here. Next week on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, Robert and I will be reviewing Tomorrowland. And then the next night is the Metal Hammer of Doom. We'll be looking at the new Faith No More album. Our next two shows on the Long Road to Ruin will be following in the usual order that they normally would. So it would be the two shows that we're doing in the month of June. We'll be looking at the Jack Ryan movies, the Tom Clancy Jack Ryan movies, the Sum of All Fears, Patriot Games, The Hunt for Red October, Shadow Recruit, and there's
Holy, I just realized something.
Yeah.
Okay. In the first BioShock game, it is established that your character's name is Jack. Initially, spoilers, I'm about to spoil a huge part of the plot of BioShock. If you haven't played this magnificent modern classic yet, number one, what the goddamn skippy hell is wrong with you? Number two, by all means, earmuffs right now. Don't listen to this part. Meanwhile, shut the podcast off. Go download BioShock. Play it. Go. Now. Anyway, as you're traveling through BioShock, the enemy you must confront at the end of the vast majority of the game, about the end of the second act of it, is Andrew Ryan, who is the founder and despot dictator of Rapture. Now, as you find out what is ultimately revealed to you, you are actually the brainwashed bastard son of Andrew Ryan. Hence, you are Jack Ryan. Kaboom! Mind blown. I just managed to connect fucking BioShock to The Hunt for Red October, Clear and Present Danger, Patriot Games, The Sum of All Fears, and Jack Ryan, not Captain Kirk.
So, very good, Sean. All right, so we'll be the first part of our Jack Ryan review. We're looking at The Hunt for Red October, Patriot Games, and Clear and Present Danger. That's one grouping. And our second show, we will spend most of it laughing at Ben Affleck and the sum of all fears. And we'll look at Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit. So I want to thank Benjamin Colon for his wonderful artwork. His title card, once again, knocked it out of the park. Loved all of us in the car with Tina Turner and Mad Max. I thought that was great. So that's what we got going on right now. There's a new Casual Heroes up. You can go check that out, where we talked about Scott Steiner being in GFW. What do you got going on, Sean?
I'm going to go poop, and then I'm going to get back to work and play video games.
All right.
No, seriously. I have a couple things that I'm working on that are kind of on hiatus because I've got a busy couple of weeks ahead of me. But otherwise, I am mostly just kind of taking it what for me amounts to fairly easy and just sort of watching movies to get ready for the show. And I'm thrilled that I get to watch the Jack Ryan series because The Hunt for Red October is legit one of my all-time childhood favorite movies.
Speaking of the shit, also look for me and Sean in June to begin our 4-part, the one show that Sean gets to host on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Our 4-part look at Orange is the New Black. Season 3 comes back in June. As soon as it comes out, we'll be doing our weekly Wednesday or Tuesday, depending on if there's a movie review that week, look at Orange is the New Black. So when it gets a little bit closer, I'll announce the start date on that. So for Sean Comer, who is he and you are not, in honor of the apocalyptic, this is Hail the Apocalypse. Be well, be safe, and behave.
Branded Ford is your real price leader, and we're making deals like never before. All new 2024 F-150s, STXs, Platinums, Raptors, Super Duties. New 2023 and 2024 full-size Broncos and Bronco Sports. And new 2024 Rangers. Other dealers don't know when they'll get them. Branded Ford has them. Save yourself some time, save yourself some money. Start your vehicle search at Branded Ford, the real price leader.
Where you bank should suit your lifestyle. From traveling and side hustles to buying your first home, Tampa Bay Federal's mobile banking is customized to fit you. Becoming a member is easy, and access to your account is even simpler. Check balances, make deposits, transfer money, or make payments, all with a simple tap, wherever you are. No big bank headaches. It's your money. It's your freedom. It's your vibe. Tampa Bay Federal, banking with benefits. Federally insured by NCUA.